I have not updated yet. The I decided not to risk it since I've been moving back over to the audio interface instead of the straight USB mic. I tested it on the old MacBook Pro, and it didn't sound good, but I don't know how much of that was needing like the audio hijack update, which I didn't try yet. So I have some other testing, but I wasn't in a rush.
Yeah. Your voice sounds different to me as well.
You sound a little more muffled than normal, but I assume that's just a byproduct of the way it's changing everything on the fly.
That's not good.
I mean, it doesn't sound bad. It just sounds like the gain might have been shifted a little bit in one direction or another.
What about now?
That sounds better. It sounds clearer.
Sibilance.
Yeah, I think right there is probably good.
I don't know if it got changed or not, but I changed it just now. Do you know the reference there for sibilance?
I don't think so. It doesn't ring a bell.
I couldn't tell you when, but it was when he was young. So it might have been late 80s, early 90s, Saturday Night Live. Tom Hanks was hosting, and I don't even remember what the skit was about. But I think he was playing like a roadie for a band, and he was testing the mics, and he kept saying sibilance, and I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen that skit, but that is, now it's like, oh, if I have to test a mic, that's what you say.
Yeah, it's not ringing a bell. I might have seen it, a long time ago, and it just not be something that stuck in my head. But
it originally would have been originally released before I was watching Saturday Night Live, or probably even knew what Saturday Night Live was, and I definitely watched it when at one point in time, reruns were on Comedy Central.
Yes.
This is back before that when they were on E.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember those days.
I do.
Yeah. I feel like that would be a good trivia question.
Pretty much the only period that I watched SNL was early 90s. There was a short run stretch there where it was the
I know
the classic cast.
Oh yeah.
And then once it changed, I just never really got back into it.
It ebbs and like the quality of the show ebbs and flows, and I want to say like in the mid 2000s it was like hit or miss, but towards the end of the 2000s it got really good, and so at this point, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure some people still watch it like it is, but at this point, they just cut up the show and post it on the on the places where you post things. So there's that now. But I will say the best thing that's on there now, the thing that I look for most is Colin Yost and Michael Che's Weekend Update.
I don't think I've ever even watched any clips of their stuff.
Okay, so
I mean, the last time I paid attention to the Weekend Update would have been Kevin Nealon.
Oh man, so you missed all of the Tina Fey, Amy Poehler.
I saw a few clips of theirs, but it's not something I sought out. Like those, I at least have come across in browsing occasionally.
So the brilliant thing about Colin, Colin, I would assume that his surname, it's spelled Jost, and he pronounces it Jost, but I assume that it's Dutch, and it would be pronounced by the Dutch as Joost. Anyway, so Colin is a dashing, attractive, he's probably middle-aged now by now, man. With boyish good looks, married to Scarlett Johansson, and is, I think, well liked by most people. I think he's from Staten Island, and Pete. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
He's the guy that's with He's a stand-up comedian, and I keep wanting to say Pete Sampras, but that's the tennis player from the '90s. Not to make it like a Pete Davidson. That's his name. Anyway, he's also. I don't even know why I brought that. It's irrelevant to what I wanted to say. Michael Che is the other guy who hosts Weekend Update with Colin Jost, and right. So Michael is a black man, and Colin is a white man, and they write each other's punchlines. And Colin has to he knows what the punchline is as he's reading the prompter, and it's often racist. And Michael J writes racist jokes for Colin just to read. They're so great. Like his reactions are why why did you make me do this?
That's funny. I could see that being an interesting dynamic. I might have to catch some clips at some point.
I'll find when I find a good one. I'll send it to you.
There's one clip. I meant to send it a couple of times. Have you seen? There's a comedian talking about blackface not being okay. Has that clip come across your radar at all?
Not one that makes me think of. I know what you're talking about, so I'm going to say no.
So I'll find it at some point. I saw it again earlier this evening, is what made me think of it as well. But a comedian on stage, and he's asking a few the black gentlemen in the crowd if blackface is ever okay, and saying no, it's not. It's racist, right? Like blackface is never okay. And somebody says something, or there's whatever in the crowd heckling that triggers the response of, well, I have to ask the black faces if blackface is okay, right? And it goes on a little bit and talks about, but then you see like the Navy SEAL commercials where everything's in blackface. I have seen this. And that's the kind of racial humor that's hilarious. I don't remember what the joke. Okay, so it talks about, imagine, talking to this black guy in the crowd, it's imagine the two of us are on a mission, and it's at 1 a.m., and it's a very important piece of information. You're going to paint me the fuck up, right? Like, yes, I have the complexion of the iPhone flashlight, I think is what he actually references it. And so he tells him he's have to, you're not going to let me go without blackface, right? And just like I'm not going to let you smile. And that's kind of where it cuts on the clip. But that's the kind of racial humor that to me is just exceptionally well timed and pulled off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That is exactly what. I think that's how you navigate some of these things. Because you would argue technically that's not blackface. Blackface is a different thing. Are you familiar? But that's what makes it funny. So, are you familiar with Dara Star Tucker?
The name sounds vaguely familiar.
I found her on TikTok, and she posts on all the major platforms, and she has a podcast, and she just will provide some of the best commentary on explanations of why things are and aren't okay. Like sometimes it's like, I know people that don't understand why, if an artist says the N-word in his song and you're a white person, why can't you say the N-word while singing along with the song? And something like that and beyond that. And one of the things she talks about was that Turner Classic Movies does not edit out people that had blackface on in the movie, and in old movies. And she was for this, and I was like, "Ooh, this is an interesting take." And the short version, I would urge anyone who is interested in this to go find Dara Star Tucker. You search for that name, you'll find her on any of the social media platforms. But she goes on to explain that they don't edit it out, and she thinks that's a good thing because it shows how jarring and shocking that is, and why we don't do it today, and why it's not okay. And they leave it in with a particular context. It's not just showing a clip. It's part of the movie as a whole, and so I found her take on that pretty interesting. And I know that she doesn't speak for the entire Black community, but she has so far been um, pretty helpful. I feel like she's given me a lot of good insight into just putting cultural context to certain things that are okay and not okay. Another one that she put up recently was about an episode of Frasier from the early 90s where she was like, hey, I know this episode, I like this episode, but I don't know what my take is on it anymore. And she shared the episode because it basically involved Frasier being afraid of telling a Black woman not to do something, and his whole family is like, yeah, it's because she's Black. And he was like, no, it's not. And it was a really interesting episode, and it was further interesting because it was brought to my attention from her, one of her videos, and she's like, I don't know what my take on this is. Like, I don't know if I think this is good or bad. And I found I think the honesty and her willingness to share something that is out there, that's been out there for 30 years, and her not knowing what her take on it is, I found that really nice and refreshing.
This is something that I've kind of been thinking about here and there over the past few weeks that I haven't mentioned. Obviously, the show notes are light, but I've been going kind of around in my head about things from the perspective of what it means to be overly sensitive versus empathetic versus attempting to modify or change a narrative versus just plain wrong. Yeah, and there are other shades of that as well. Like I'm not wanting to say it's just those categories, but just what that continuum looks like, because that's what it is. There's the extreme, attempt to change or rewrite or completely whitewash history at one extreme, and at the other extreme, I would say would be the when did we get so sensitive crowd, right? The ones that can't you take a joke? There's no contextual awareness of what they're saying or what they're interpreting. It's just they've always said this, and why is it now a problem, kind of thing. And I can understand how different things are more difficult to cleanly place on that continuum than others, especially when it's something that is not necessarily directly impacting you, though you may have an interest in that particular thing, as opposed to the things that are directed towards you as an individual or toward your identity as a part of a group. And there are a lot of things in thinking through this that I don't know what my take is on it. Just to borrow the nomenclature, because I like that.
Yeah.
There are plenty of things that kind of my gut reaction is, why is this problematic? And then there are plenty of things that my gut reaction is, why is this not problematic? And it's...
I think that...
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I didn't have a clean follow-up to that. It was just kind of, I think it's interesting that as we age and become just more aware of nuances, how everything suddenly kind of blurs into these categories of either making sense or not making sense, and you can't quite put your finger on why.
So I thought about it as it's, there's using that label take to be it's more than a reaction, or there's more thought put into it than a reaction, but less than forming an opinion maybe. And so I would say to it's one of those things where it's like you have a hot take where someone's like, well, what are your first, and that would be your initial thoughts on it. So it's even in between a take and a reaction. But that's because we all want to put things somewhere and organize things in our heads, or some of us do as humans.
It has to have a label for us to make sense of it. It's okay.
Yeah. And maybe sometimes we can say those are our labels internally, and we have to, speak more to understand what other people's internal labels are. But that's a thing we've talked about before. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, why is this okay? Why is this not okay? I don't understand why this one thing is okay and that other thing is not okay. And when you don't understand, it's good to be open. And I remember having a conversation. This really resonated with me. But it's like, carrying racist and prejudiced thoughts are not what make you racist. It's the unwillingness to learn and change and move away from those racist and prejudiced thoughts that make you a racist. And a defiance to learning and growing and empathizing. I think that if there's something where you don't understand, it's like, I don't understand this thing. Why was this joke funny or not funny? It's good to look at people who are from that community and who is affected by that community. Whereas, the bit was doing just that. Is blackface okay? No, it's not okay. Well, what if? And, we can have a fun joke about that because we know it's not actually blackface. But it's funny to call it blackface because it's adjacent. It has a different purpose. It's, so it's, I think that it's like, we have to look into the community, and not just one person, but we have to look into the community and find out how does the community accept this? Because I don't remember what Samuel L. Jackson's character is in Django Unchained, but there are people that placate. I won't even take, not even specifically with black folks and white folks, but there are people who will placate. Oppressor might be the wrong word, but in this sense, maybe that's okay. But there are individuals oppressed of the oppressed that will kiss the ass of the oppressor to gain status with the oppressor. And so you have to be careful of someone who may give an opinion from that particular dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. There are a few things to unpack there that I want to kind of point out, because they're all intertwined. There's some nuance to them. One, so the thought of an individual's responses being biased because of external influences or external factors would be kind of the way I would describe that last piece. But the reference to gauging a community's reaction is also somewhat problematic because of the diversity of communities. And we've seen that a lot, especially over the past decade, just to be generous. And then in making it even more complex or convoluted is that a community could be misrepresented by a certain subset of individuals who hold a stronger reaction based on just what region you're in. And so your circle of those that you could look to as a representation of a community could be skewed or not representative of the community after all. And all of those are just kind of nuanced elements of the same general problem, right? It's that we're all human. We all have differing views and opinions. And even though we might have some level of consensus on a particular thing, when you get to other variations, one way or another, either more extreme or less extreme, often you will have a much wider range of reactions or interpretation and response on those than you might have something that's very clearly not okay. Like if you were to start arresting only black people, that would be something that you could pretty clearly point to as wrong. But if you were to disproportionately arrest black people in one state out of 50, which of course we don't do, it's more like 25 out of 50. But actually, it's probably worse than that, to be fair. But those types of things, just to provide examples that to kind of help illustrate the nuance, those types of things become more and more difficult to figure out. Is it actually an issue affecting that community, or is it because of the representative sample within that area? And the reason I phrase it that way is, let's just say Michigan, just coming to mind because of Detroit. Let's just say Michigan suddenly was the only state that had a disproportionate arrest record for black individuals over anybody else. You could hear the narrative going both ways. It could be a disproportionate amount of the population that's there, thinking about the working class in Detroit, or it could be actually problematic. And how do you reconcile what the actual motive or problem is when it could be attributed to both? And of course, this takes into account, or doesn't take into account, the wonderful tools of historical trends and statistical analysis and everything else. So you could potentially get to a fairly clear picture of what's going on. But just at a high level, using that as from an individual's perspective, trying to navigate things, it opens up a world of problems if you aren't able to get further clarification that is a bit more objective. I think that makes sense. It's a tough concept to describe. I'm finding.
I don't really know where to go from there on that.
I don't know that we even have to. Like, it really was just a matter of, this has been an interesting thing that's been on my mind a little bit, but I didn't even have it fleshed out as a thought either for us to discuss on a show. It was just where we started kind of brought this to the forefront as something to at least mention, and maybe this acts as just a teaser for a later episode.
I like that.
So with that, I'll pivot to the one thing I put in the show notes, which is only about a half hour later than where I had it identified to fit in. But
I knew we'd have stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it can be a post-flight instead of a pre-flight. That's fine.
Yeah.
With a lot of the things that we've done with rearranging the office space, I went ahead and pulled the spruce, actually, and I'm not using it anymore. Only because for whatever reason, I know it's the older wiring in the house. And I know we've talked about it before, but there's that high-pitched whine that you can hear if nothing is plugged in or drawing power through it. It's real faint, but it's there. And I finally decided I just didn't want to constantly either unplug it for that whine to not be present, or always cycle through having something either on the wireless charger or plugged in. So I've unplugged it for now and set it with all of my other stuff, and am using a couple of Anker. I say Anker. I think they say Anker.
I say Anker too.
But I'm using a couple of their... I'd call it a power brick more than I would call it
That's pretty cool.
multi-device charger. But so far it works out well.
So does it have a display on it to show you the outputs, the voltage and amperage output on the for the USB ports?
It does, and it cycles through. You can see, I think it's wattage and amperage on two different screens, or two different sets of displays. Not two different screens. It's the same screen.
Right. That's really interesting. I was wondering why they have the iPhone next to it, and I realized it's to show how slim it is, and the sleek and slim picture. But it's an interesting device. Pop-up outlet.
Yeah. So
as you push it in, does it pop up?
It does.
Yeah.
And I assume that's just based on with how slim they have it. It's not deep enough to keep prongs properly seated if it doesn't have some travel with the outlets to make sure that the prong gets fully seated into the outlet.
I wonder if it seats correctly, but it just would leave it exposed, and that's maybe a hazard.
That's what it appears to be.
Yeah,
but
that's what you were saying.
Yeah, when you plug something in, though, there's no like it as you push down, the surrounding molding for the what you would think of as like the outlet cover, maybe, I guess, rises, but it's just the portion of it that's a receptacle.
Yeah. It looks like probably the insertion is what pushes it. There's something.
Yeah. So I have my Apple Power Brick plugged into one side, and I have an Anker little cube, the smaller. It's about the size of the Apple iPhone charger, the little white brick.
It's the one that it's a GAN charger.
This one might be. It might predate the GAN ones. So the overall piece is the part of the GAN lineup, but the little power brick that I have, because the work phone and work AirPods still have the Lightning connector. I just plugged that in to be able to plug in a basic USB to Lightning connector. Because I had the USB-C to Lightning cable handy, and I already had 2 USB-C cables plugged in. I could have gone and grabbed one of my USB-A cables and plugged it into one of the open ports instead, but I was being lazy.
Yeah, I got a couple of those. The Nano iPhone charger. It's a 20 watt. It's the same size as the old charger that came with the iPhones. I think it was a 5 watt charger, and Anker made I think they still make it. It doesn't say GAN what its technology, but it charges fast.
Yeah, I have a USB-C to USB-C cable and a USB-C to the watch cable plugged in the 2 USB-C ports.
I need. I'm looking for the A to USB-C. The ones that I found that Anker makes, they have a 2-pack that are 6 feet long, and they are, I want to say, $12, and then the 2-pack of 3 feet long are $20. And I'm like, they're just not making. I don't think they're making.
I think I still have a couple of USB-A to USB-C cables. I can look. I'm almost positive I've got a couple stashed.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.